Welcome back, Keepers. I had a feeling that you wouldn't stay away for too long. There's always a moment right after you return where everything feels exactly where you left it. The room, the rhythm, the quiet, all still, all settled, all seemingly unchanged. But stillness can be misleading. It holds, it hovers, it waits without announcing what it's been waiting for. And sometimes what resumes isn't what's paused. The glass is just where you've left it. The chair hasn't shifted. The air feels the same, which makes it easier to continue without noticing what might have settled in while you were away. And sometimes it's not the beginning or the end that matters. It's the space in between. The part that stretches and settles and subtly shifts while you're still inside it. Let us resume. Autumn in New England arrives without argument. Copper crowns the hills. Scarlet scatters across stone. Wind wanders through maple and pine in low, measured murmurs. It is a season of surrender, of soft descent, of deliberate decline, the kind that fall could belong to any small town, the kind you pass through without pause. Covered bridges belong there, red-roofed, low-beamed and waiting. They cross rivers that whisper beneath warped planks. They creak. They confirm their age. They confirm their purpose. They offer passage and promise arrival. But a few miles outside Bartlett, there's a bridge that offers neither. It is concrete, gray, gargantuan, a stark open span set sharply into the forest that did not ask for it. No river beneath, no ravine, no visible necessity. Just a two-lane road that narrows, then rises, then commits. The kind of rise that feels ordinary until you notice how long it lasts. Locals call it Cold Hollow Crossing, though no hollow bears that name and no signs mark the turn. It appears without announcement. It accepts without acknowledgement. It could be near you, it could be near anyone. That's the trouble. It begins simply: steel rails, reflective paint, measured markers along the shoulder, familiar and functional, forgettable details that confirm the comfort of continuity. Then about midway, something shifts, not dramatically, not violently, subtly, sequentially. The forest withdraws. It's not cut back, it's not cleared, it's just receded, as though trees have taken a step away in quiet, coordinated caution, as though distance itself had been delicately adjusted. Fog follows. It's thin at first, and then deliberate. Then it's dense with quiet insistence. It does not roll, it does not rush, it gathers, it lingers. It laces itself beneath the lines and the lanes as though it prefers precision over movement. The hum of tires deepens. The air inside the vehicle grows weighted, thicker, slower to shift. Radios lose signal. Engines echo longer than they should, not louder, just lingering, like sound has found more space than it deserves. Like something had stretched the distance between cause and return. One driver accelerated hard enough to rattle his steering column. The speedometer climbed, the engine answered, but the bridge did not conclude. Said the guardrails beside him appeared subtly staggered, not bending, not broken, just slightly misaligned, as though their placement had been reconsidered between glances, as though the edges were adjusting themselves in quiet disagreement. Now he pressed the pedal harder. And that's when he felt it, as though something beneath the wheels and the road had softened, not weakened or failed, just softened. The asphalt did not crack, did not crumble. It yielded faintly, like pressure pressed into something pliable, like tires rolling over tension instead of tar, like the road beneath them had briefly forgotten its firmness. Not enough to see, just enough to sense, enough to stay with him. And for a fraction of a breath, it felt as though distance itself had loosened. Another driver did the opposite. He slowed, carefully, intentionally. The vehicle resisted acceleration when he tried to correct it. The pedal obeyed. The engine answered. But forward motion arrived delayed, dulled, and distant, disconnected. He checked his mirrors. The forest behind him appeared farther away than it should have been. Not smaller, not obscured, just farther, as though he had stepped back when he wasn't looking. Ahead, no end in sight, only fog. Flat, featureless, and final. He stopped the car completely, just for a moment, just to orient himself. The engine continued running, but the world did not. When he pressed the pedal again, the car moved, but not immediately. There was a pause, a distinct, perceptible pause, as though the motion required permission. Now he did not stop again. There was a woman who reported something different. She claimed the crossing felt shorter than expected, that she reached the far side far too quickly, that the midpoint passed without presence, without pause, without proof it had ever even been there. When she checked the time, she had lost 11 minutes she could not account for. Surveyors measured the span last spring. 312 feet. Exact, repeated, verified. Concrete does not lie. Geometry does not improvise. And yet drivers who hesitate, who hover, who linger, who let their attention settle too firmly at that center describe something else entirely. They describe a still point. Not a place you can reach, but a place that reaches you. Where forward feels optional, where distance feels negotiable, where space between where you are and where you're going becomes uncertain. One man attempted to turn around midway. Simple correction, a cautious reconsideration. He signaled, he slowed, began the turn. Halfway through, he stopped. Not because he saw something, it's because he couldn't. The lane behind him did not align the way it should have. The road had just traveled that he was just on did not sit where memory insisted it belonged. Angles felt altered. Alignment felt proximate. He completed the turn anyways, drove back the way he came. Does not remember reaching the forest, only being in it. Another stepped out on foot, said he needed air, said the interior of the vehicle felt too contained, too close, too carefully constructed. The fog had thickened by then. It was dense, deliberate, and distinctly present. He walked to the rail, looked over, expected forest, expected ravine, expected something to confirm depth. Instead, he described a downward, without descent. Downward. Gray without gradient. Depth that did not diminish with distance. He said it felt less like looking down and more like looking into something that had not finished forming. He returned to his truck immediately. The door closed heavier than it should have. He drove forward and reached the far tree line in seconds. Abrupt, unceremonious, as though the crossing had simply decided he had spent enough time considering it. Locals prefer the covered bridge by the mill now. Wood over water. Red over river. Something that creaks and complains and confirms its own age. Something that behaves. Something that belongs. Because Cold Hollow Crossing does not behave. Does not break. It does not bend. It does not fail. It simply does not remain consistent. And consistency, after all, is the quiet contract that keeps reality intact. Now, if you ever find yourself on that road, if the trees begin to thin, if the fog begins to gather, if the hum of your engine lingers longer than it should, do not slow, do not stop, do not measure the midpoint, and above all, do not look for where the center is. Because the moment you begin to consider it, the crossing may begin to consider you. Distance behaves until you decide to measure it. The middle is not always meant to be understood. Travel invites trust. We step into foreign streets and surrender ourselves to strangers with laminated badges and rehearsed smiles. We let them lead. We let them narrate. Let them name things we do not yet understand. We offer our attention freely, and sometimes, without realizing it, we offer a little more than that. There is a rhythm to being guided. Feel it settle in slowly. At first, everyone walks a little too fast, a little too scattered, glancing at storefronts, checking phones, deciding whether or not this will be worth their time. Then the cadence changes. Footsteps begin to match. Conversations fade and eyes drift forward. The guide becomes the center, and the The rest of the world rearranges itself around them. Questions come in clusters at the beginning. Eager, surface level, and safe. How old is this building? Is this original tile? What is the best place to eat? The guide answers easily, confidently, creating a pattern of reliability. Once that pattern is established, something else settles in, something quieter. People stop questioning and they start listening. Once joined a walking tour in Portugal. Narrow lanes, laundry lines drifting along like quiet flags, light leaning lazily through tile facades in the color of faded porcelain. The kind of place that feels familiar too quickly, like it had decided you belong before you've earned. Our guide introduced himself simply as Raphael. He had a soft voice, sharp eyes, and posture precise enough to suggest discipline without rigidity. He did not carry notes. He did not consult a map. He did not hesitate. That alone was impressive. But what followed was invasive. Raphael did not begin with architecture. He began with people. He stopped before a yellow townhouse and gestured toward the balcony. "Second floor," he said. A woman once stood there every evening, waiting for someone who never returned. She kept a candle in the window for 13 years. He paused just long enough to let that image settle in. "No one remembers the man," he continued calmly. "But the neighbors remember the smoke." The group shifted slightly, not alarmed, not yet, just attentive. Curious in that careful way people are when they don't know whether something is true or if it should be. No plaque marked the building, no inscription noted that story. Nothing official, nothing confirmed. A woman beside me asked how he knew. Raphael smiled faintly and said, "She told me." The group laughed, but he did not. The laugh thinned quickly because it had nowhere to go. We moved on, and he offered another story before anyone could question the first. It was a narrow doorway. A man who never locked it said he was waiting for someone who had already died. Raphael described the way the neighbors would pass more quickly at night, the way the door would sometimes be found open in the morning. No record, no marker, just detail. That was the pattern. Give just enough to intrigue, never enough to verify. Always delivered with some calm certainty. As we moved through the historic district, his commentary shifted. Less history and more intimacy. He began finishing sentences for tourists before they had fully formed, stepping into thoughts before they had time to settle. A man from Chicago mentioned loving jazz. Raphael nodded. "Your father did not," he said softly. The man blinked, caught between confusion and reflective politeness. "How did he?" Raphael was already walking. The group reacted the same way groups do. Someone laughed softly, someone said, "Oh, that's a good guess." Someone else reported the line like it was part of the tour. The moment smoothed itself out because no one wanted to be the first one to make it strange. A young couple whispered about their honeymoon. Raphael turned without being asked and said, 3 days, Claire. Then a call you weren't expecting. bride froze. Her husband turned towards her, searching her face for the context that she hadn't provided. She hadn't even introduced herself. She didn't even say her name. She wasn't even wearing a name tag. This time, the silence lasted longer. It was not broken, not filled, just held. We told ourselves it was intuition, micro-expressions, ancient clues, lucky guesses delivered with confidence. We explained it away because explanation is easier than admission. But the details sharpened, dates, specific phrasing, the exact wording of something that someone had heard once and never repeated. The color of a room that no one had described. The kind of detail that doesn't come from observation, it comes from access. He never raised his voice, he never dramatized, he simply placed information where it did not belong. It was quietly, precisely, like he already knew the road ahead. At one point, he stepped into a courtyard. The fountain was dry, stone, sun, bleached, pigeon still, the kind of space that feels separate from the street, like sound had to ask permission to enter. He turned to me, not generally, not casually, but directly. "You collect stories," he said. Not a question. I smiled politely. People assume that about travelers, about observers, about men who listen more than they speak. He tilted his head slightly and said, "You think they protect you?" So when the courtyard felt smaller, the air was heavier. Became aware of the group again. It was close, but not involved. Like they were standing just outside the moment. I said nothing. And he stepped closer. Not enough to alarm, but enough to be certain. "Some stories do not shield," he said. "They signal." The word did not feel like language. It felt like placement. No one reacted. No one interrupted. It was though the moment had not been offered to them. He turned and continued walking. And the group followed, because that's what groups do. They continue. They adjust. They decide not to question what would complicate their experience. But after that, he stopped describing places entirely and only described people. Quietly, confidently, consistently. "He lies about the year," he murmured near a man's shoulder. "She still reads the messages," he said, passing to another. "Not your fault," he told a woman who he had not spoken to yet. Each sentence delivered the same way. It was calm, it was even, it was placed exactly where it would land. And by then, the group had changed. People stood a little farther apart. Conversation stayed quieter. No one asked questions anymore, not because there weren't any, but because asking anything would require acknowledgement. The tour ended near the river. There was applause, polite laughter, a release that came a little too quickly. When I approached him to thank him, he was already looking at me. "You won't sleep well tonight," he said, gently, not threatening. It was not cruel, it was just certain. "You won't forget this." Asked how long he'd been giving tours. He tilted his head and said, "As long as necessary." Necessary. I almost asked for whom, but I didn't. And then he added, like it was nothing, "You tell stories as insulation. They tell others where to look." The river behind him moved slowly and silently, and for a moment I had the distinct feeling that something had been listening, not to him, but through him. Later I checked. There's nothing. There's no Raphael, no tour, no listing, no trace. And yet everyone who was there remembers him. He remembers his voice, remembers the way he spoke before they did. Because he didn't reveal secrets. He revealed where the secrets were. He showed where attention to detail should settle and where it should stay. Once something knows where to look, it doesn't need to be told what to find. There are guides that show you cities, and there are guides who study the traveler. Choose carefully which one that you follow, because some guides do not lead you forward. They mark you. Mount Tamalpais does not announce itself. It rises quietly above Marin County, a slow, steady presence rather than a sudden spectacle. Mist drapes its shoulders in measured folds, moving with a kind of quiet intention that feels less like weather and more like habit. Eucalyptus and redwoods stitch shadow in the slope, their scent carried in cool, shifting currents that change with each step. Near the summit, the remnants of the old gravity car rail still linger, rust resting in the brush, timber ties softened by time, an abandoned ambition threaded carefully into hillside. In springtime, poppies coat the rolling hillside in a sea of copper gold, creating slow waves of color that shift into the wind in broad, breathing patterns. Above the fog line, the sun settles warm and steady against your shoulders, consistent and convincing. Step into the mist and the air turns subtly cool, close, coastal, pressing softly against skin and sound from a clearing above the Golden Gate. It appears and disappears beneath Carl's drifting veil while San Francisco glints faintly beyond in the gray and distant and delicate, like something remembered rather than seen. It is a place of vantage, of view, of quiet elevation. People come here to look outward, to measure distance, to feel above something rather than within it. That has always been the appeal. In the early 1900s, tourists once rode open-air cars down the mountain. Steel wheels, wooden benches, wind pulling at collars and coats as its gravity did the rest. They called it scenic. They called it safe. They did not call it permanent. Rail line was adjusted several times during construction. Old maps show minor deviations, small corrections presented as practical decisions. A curve shifted east, a spur removed, section abandoned before completion. Official records cite instability in the grounds, soil too soft, slope too unpredictable. That is the explanation preserved because it is the explanation that satisfies. Last spring, a woman hiking alone near the summit wandered slightly off the marked trail. Not recklessly, not dramatically, just curiously. Kind of small detour we all justify when the path ahead feels too certain. She noticed a straight line cutting faintly through the undergrowth. Timber beneath moss, iron spikes half surrendered to soil, did not look maintained, but it did not look forgotten either. She followed it. The air changed first. Not silent, not empty, just still. Subtle stillness that did not remove sound, but seemed to hold it in place. Even the wind appeared to move around the section rather than through it, bending gently as its edges, though respecting a boundary, did not create. The line continued longer than it should have. Straight, consistent, resistant to the natural interruptions of root and rock that usually break such patterns apart. She stepped over a rotten beam, careful without knowing why. Her boot struck something solid, not wood, not root, it was stone, flat and intentional. She knelt and brushed away the soil, slow at first, then more deliberately. A circular slab of dark basalt emerged, too symmetrical to be natural, too precisely placed to be incidental. Carved along the edge were shallow grooves, repeating, radiating outward in measured intervals, not decorative, not random, directional in a way that she could not quite explain. She cleared more dirt. The stone extended farther than expected. It had been seated deliberately, centered beneath where the rail once ran. It was not discarded, not displaced, it was placed. She pried at the edge with a broken rail spike. It resisted at first, then it shifted with a dull, reluctant movement, like something settling rather than opening. Beneath it was a cavity, shallow but precise, lined with a packed clay that held its shape with unnatural consistency. Inside lay an object wrapped in woven plant fiber. Fibers had not rotted. They had tightened, drawn inward over time, preserved by pressure and dryness as though the earth itself had kept them intact. She unwrapped it slowly, layer by layer, each fold revealing less than expected and more than it should. Inside was a carved wooden figure, rough-hewn and palm-length, human in outline, but not in proportion. The head was elongated, the limbs were uneven, the eyes were hollowed deep enough to hold shadow even in direct light. The mouth was not carved open, but sealed shut with resin. It was glossed and deliberate. She turned it over. Back bore markings, not letters, but symbols she recognized. Repeating cuts, 3 vertical lines, then 1 horizontal. Again and again, careful repetition, not decoration, not language. It was a pattern, a boundary. She felt an unexpected reluctance to hold it too long. Not for fear exactly, more like resistance, as though it had been placed face down for a reason, as though its orientation mattered, as though exposure itself was the big mistake. According to a story preserved among railway families, workers halted grading for nearly 2 weeks. Crews reported that duty refused to disturb one particular section of earth. Supervisors changed, suppliers accumulated, and the official explanation was never extended beyond concerns about the terrain. Whatever its makers believed, the object appeared intended not for worship but for quieting. It had been sealed, seated beneath a threshold, positioned to temper something below. It was not a curse, not an idol. It was a containment. The Rail workers may not have understood the markings, but they would have understood interruption, delay, and unease, a sense that progress was being measured against something other than distance. Perhaps they chose to move the line rather than move the stone. As she examined this cavity further, at the base, pressed into clay, were handprints, multiple, layered, overlapping in a circular formation, not fossilized, not ancient in the way stone becomes ancient, but preserved the moment the clay had hardened. It's a ring of pressure, coordinated placement. It was holding something in place, holding something beneath weight. The basalt slab had not been a marker. It had been a lid. She replaced the figure in the fiber wrapping, set it back into the clay, lowered it in the stone carefully, aligning it with the edges as though alignment mattered, covering it, pressing the soil firm. The change was immediate. The wind returned first, a sharp coastal gust cutting through eucalyptus leaves with sudden familiar force. Sound resumed in layers, distant voices, insects, this subtle shift of branches overhead. The mountain resumed its rhythm as though nothing had been interrupted. She stepped back onto the trail and did not look behind her again. Tourists still hiked the summit. They photographed the Pacific. They praised the panorama and stand above something measured and reseated. Something quieted and kept in place. And perhaps that is best, because some artifacts are not hidden to be forgotten. They are hidden to remain exactly where they were first found. Some reroutes are not engineering decisions. They're negotiations. What's buried is not always hidden. It is positioned. And position implies purpose. There is a particular kind of person who does not just enter rooms. He inhabits them, quietly, completely, without announcement. He did not remember when he arrived, only that his presence feels retroactive, as though it had been accounted for before you thought to look for it. Every story gathers an audience. Some watch, some listen, some linger longer than necessary. And some take inventory, not of what is said, but of how it is said. Not of what is shown, but what is withheld. Not of what resolves, but what remains. In the early months of a small late-night storytelling series, there was a viewer who commented beneath every episode, never first, never last, always somewhere inconspicuous, positioned within the middle third as though placement mattered, as though visibility was being managed rather than avoided. His username was simple, just 3 letters. No profile photo, no banner, no digital residue beyond the channel itself. An obedience arranged to resemble anonymity. Structured just enough to feel intentional. First, the comments were flattering. Measured pacing and elegant restraint. Effective use of withheld resolution. They were observant and analytical. Almost editorial in tone. Not quite admiration, something closer to assessment. and the language evolved, incrementally, imperceptibly. He began anticipating structure instead of responding to it. This one resolves before it realizes it has ended. Then, relocation remains a recurring inclination. Containment appears where it is least acknowledged. The phrasing shifted from reaction to arrangement, as though the stories were being positioned rather than observed. Other viewers began interacting with him, lightly at first, jokes and agreements, occasional questions. He answered rarely, but when he did, the replies were brief and precise, often phrased in a way that felt less like conversation, more like correction. One evening, days before an episode premiered, he posted, "Expect deviation near the summit." There had been no public mention of elevation, no preview, no suggestion of terrain. The script had not even been recorded. When the episode aired days later, the comment remained time-stamped and unedited, quietly out of sequence. Moderators suggested coincidence. Pattern recognition extended little too far. Viewer projecting expectation into incomplete information. That explanation held until archived versions of earlier comments began displaying minor alterations. Not deletions, not corrections, just refinements. A phrase was sharpened, a term introduced, pattern clarified after it had already been noticed. A line once reading, "strong use of distance," later appeared as "strong use of distance where the middle does not behave like the edges." Phrasing felt familiar without being attributable, like something remembered without knowing when it had been learned. He began referencing production details. Frame near the lamp adjusted. Chair settled slightly left. Surface gained a mark. Each observation accurate, each detail subtle, each change unannounced. The kind of things you only notice if you're watching not for movement, but for consistency. Then came the message that was not public. Time-stamped at 2:17 a.m. No greeting, no preamble, just a single line. "You don't always close the door." That gap he referenced only existed in shadows. It's a fraction of absence where something should have aligned and did not. Visible only if you were already looking at it. There's a patience that feels polite, and a patience that feels predatory. He never threatened, never dramatized, never escalated. He categorized and cataloged calmly, consistently, clinically, returning to the same elements with slight variation, as though confirming they remained exactly where he expected them to be. He began replying not to the host, but to other viewers, encouraging interpretation, suggesting subtexts, guiding discourse without appearing to guide it. Observe the avoidance. Patterns persist when revisited. Memory matters. A phrase appeared repeatedly, placed in different contexts, different settings, different each time. A viewer once asked, "Do you think this connects to the last one?" He replied, "Only if you noticed it before." Another asked, "Is this supposed to mean something?" He answered, "It already did." Replies did not clarify, they just repositioned. One night during a live performance, a viewer typed, "Do you think he reads these?" Before the host responded, the 3-letter username replied, "He reads what remains." Then that message vanished just seconds later. No moderator claimed deletion. The archive did not preserve it. Only a handful of viewers recalled it, and even then, not identically. Then came something quieter. A comment appeared beneath an episode before the script had even been finalized. It read, "You will leave part of it out." That evening, the host removed a section, not intentionally, not consciously. It was simply feeling unnecessary, as though the story had already decided where it ended. The comment had not predicted the omission, it had participated in it. Over time, other viewers began adjusting as well. Comments shortened, observations sharpened, and some stopped asking questions entirely. Others began phrasing things differently, as though mirroring a pattern they had not realized they were learning. A new account appeared, also 3 letters. No image, no history. Its comments were less frequent, but aligned, placed in similar patterns, phrased to a similar restraint, not identical, but adjacent. 2 accounts never interacted directly, not visibly, but occasionally. One would respond in a way that felt like continuation of something that the other had not quite said aloud. Consider the possibility that no one had been observing the stories alone. That attention itself had been measured, not just in quantity, but in quality. Who pauses, who rewatches, who lingers lightly and longer than necessary. Who notices what was not pointed out? Some viewers admire, some analyze, some attach, some begin to recognize patterns they cannot place, structures that they cannot fully articulate, connections that feel obvious only after they have already formed. The last message arrived tonight, time-stamped 8 minutes before recording began. It read, "You are closer than you think." No punctuation, no elaboration, just placement. Beneath it, reply from the newer account. "We are not finished." That account had been active for several episodes now, not prominently, not persistently, just enough to remain, enough to be noticed if you were paying attention. And if you are paying attention, there's a possibility you've already done something you did not mean to do. You may have already paused longer than necessary. You may have already had to reread a comment. You may have recognized a pattern that you have not chosen to follow it further. Or maybe you have followed it. Because once something begins to map where attention settles, it does not need to direct it. It only needs to wait for it to return. There are audiences who watch stories, and there are audiences who become part of what the story is doing. The difference is rarely accounted for, and is usually realized far too late. If you notice them, it is not the first time they have noticed you. And if something is already determined where you fit within the pattern, then you are no longer simply watching it. You're part of what it is arranging. Some patterns are easy to see once you know where to look. By then, you've already been placed within them. Not everything that watches waits. Some things sort, study, and settle till the structure begins to include you. There's a tendency, after something concludes, to assume that it is ended. That once the final detail settles, it no longer continues beyond the moment it was observed. And that assumption is convenient, but not always accurate. Because some things do not stop when they are no longer being watched. They persist. They press forward. They remain in quiet motion, whether you return to them or not. And sometimes they move it further, carried in conversation, shared in subtle suggestion, revisited by those who recognize something without fully understanding why. Because recognition has a way of repeating from one mind to another, from one moment to the next, until something once contained is no longer confined. So if something from tonight feels familiar, if it lingers just a little longer than it should, then there is a certain value in allowing it to continue. After all, what persists tends to grow. Until next time, my keepers, remain attentive to what follows you. I am your host, and tonight, I am the monster in your closet.